You can laugh as much as you want at this story, but you cannot laugh at me, okay? Hell, come on, man. That hurts my feelings, brother. So, I tell this story to set it up for tonight. I told the story earlier today, and I just want to share this story with you. When you run retreats like this, people think you've grown up your whole life like holy, like Ned Flanders' children from The Simpsons, you know, like, yay, Bible study. And that wasn't me. When I grew up, I was a really angry kid. I was the angry kid at school. You know the angry kid, you look at him funny, he's like, I'll kill you. That was me. I got into fights all the time. My parents put me in the sport of boxing when I was 6 because they thought it would help channel my anger. It just made me an angry, really good fighter. It was a horrible idea. It's like, now I can destroy people. Thanks, Mom. And I was always bigger than most of my classmates. By like my senior year in high school, I was 6'4", about 210 pounds, at like 8% body fat. I worked out all the time. Now, I didn't go around beating people up, but people knew I could fight, so they wouldn't mess with me. And I also looked old enough to buy beer, so I'd be the guy bringing the keg to the party, and they'll be like, we love you. And I'm like, I know. And so that's kind of where I was. And everybody thought I had this perfect life. And they're like, oh man, your home life's great, everything. But I was actually pretty miserable. But I wouldn't let anybody know. And I wouldn't let anybody get close to me because I didn't want them to know what was going on in my life. I don't know if any of you can relate, but everybody thinks you have the perfect family. And you're like, you guys have no idea what's going on in my family. It's kind of messed up and scary a little bit. Two other hobbies that I had. I grew up my whole life being a snowboarder and a surfer. You're going to hear me say the word dude a lot. Please don't think I'm an old guy trying to be hip with the young folk of your generation. I invented that word 45 years ago when I was born. I was angry even then. The doctor slapped me. I was like, dude, I'll kill you. And could you imagine? And so some bad things had happened to me, and I was like, you know what, I'm not sure I believe in God. I'm angry. I don't want to do anything, and I just wanted to go to the beach, and I didn't want to have anything to do with religion. So as I got older, by like my senior year in high school, I used to go to this one beach, and I'd just sit on this picnic table and hang out and just look at the waves coming in. I didn't want to hear anything about religion, nothing. I was just angry at everybody. And all of a sudden, I started hearing music. What I know for sure is there is a God, and he seeks us out. No matter how messed up you are, God's going to find a way to get there. Because if he can find me, he can find anybody. And this is kind of that story, how I ended up being on this stage. This is, the last thing I ever want to do is work a youth conference. I'm like, you kidding me? No offense. I hated you. So here I am sitting on this picnic table, and I start hearing music come from behind me. And I'm like, I love this stuff, man. I'd never heard it before. And I'm like, what is this music? It's awesome. And I turn around, it's coming from this van in the parking lot. And everywhere I go, you're like, van. Nothing good happens in a van. And you're right, because the slider opens and all this smoke comes pouring out, and tequila bottles come crashing out, and 4 really stoned guys get out of a van. 2 of them were from Jamaica, and 2 of them were from Australia. They're professional surfers. And the leader of this group was a guy named Larry. He was from Jamaica, and he had dreadlocks that went down past his knees. And he was a bodybuilder. His arms were massive. He was like, his neck was so thick, he used to wear this cross, but it was so tight it made Jesus stick out horizontally. And he had all these Bible verses on his arms, and he was just massive. And he sat down next to me. Larry was big. I couldn't kill him. And he's staring at me, and I'm just looking straight out. I'm like, no, please don't start talking to me. And he talks to me, and he goes like this. Sean, man, listen to me. Your friends gave me a name. I see it here. Every day, bust it up inside, man. You got to take that pain and give it to the man. You can't keep it inside you. And I'm like, what? I'm like, dude, I'm Irish. I have no idea what you just said to me. He's like, inside you is pain. You must take that pain and give it to the man. I'm like, give my pain to the man. He goes, yes, true story. I go, Jesus? He goes, no, man, Bob Marley. And I'm like, the reggae singer? He goes, he was a god. I'm like, okay, smoke some more crack in your van and leave me alone, man. And he goes, I want to teach you his music. His music's going to heal your heart. And I'm like, I don't want to sing. He's like, shut up and sing. I'm like, okay, man. So he went and got a guitar, put it out on my lap. And this is the first song I ever learned. I'm just going to do a little bit. It goes like this. No only going to do one more. No woman, no cry. No woman, no cry. Say, say. Now, that's the first song I ever learned on the guitar. And it was still one of my all-time favorite songs. And my father comes up to me and he goes, listen, man, I know you like music, but I've got great news for you. And I'm like, what's that? And he goes, I saved a ton of money. I can put you all the way through college. Now, most people would be excited, but I looked at my dad and I'm like, dude, I'm not going to college. He's like, yes, you are. I'm like, no, I'm not. He's like, either you go to college or you spend the next 40 years of your life working at Dunkin' Donuts. And I was like, cool. He's like, that'll get pretty old after a while. I'm like, not really. They come out with new flavors every month. He's like, shut up and go. So I went to a business school, and I walked into my first class. Don't you do this. This is my testimony. Okay? I'm letting you know what a knucklehead I was. I kicked open this is a business school. I kicked open my first class ever in college. I kicked open the door. I'm wearing a tank top, shorts, and I'm barefoot, and I have one piece of paper and a giant Mickey Mouse pen my friend gave me. When you wrote, his ears would light up. I kick open the door, and I'm like, let the learning begin. And they're all just staring at me, and they've got suits on. And this one guy looks at me, he's like, we take this seriously here. Why don't you grab a seat so we can start class? What do you think of that? I'm like, I think I'll kill you later. And I go, that's just horrible, I know. And I go and I sit in the back of the room, the teacher comes in, man, doesn't even say hello, he's just like, and everybody else is like, we're learning. Learning's fun, learning's good, we're learners of learning things. All I see is hieroglyphics. Have you ever been in a class where you realize within 5 seconds of the teacher speaking, you have failed that thing for the year? You're like, this year's going to be different. I'm going to get I'm done. Yeah. And your notebook becomes a holder for your great artwork collection. You're like, look, another pony. Like, hey, you loser, right? So he's writing, more people got stacks of notebooks. I'm sitting there drawing like tornadoes and spider webs, and I start getting really mad. So I start praying, and I'm like, Lord Jesus, please kill him. I'm like, whatever it takes, stroke, heart attack, stray bullet, kill this man, get him out of my life. And I started blaming everybody else for my problems. It was never my fault. It was always somebody else's, right? Never my issue, somebody else's issue. And I started doing really bad in school. And because where I lived on campus, right across the street was a local town bar, and I started hanging out there. Because my problems always went away in the evening, but they kept coming back in the morning, and I couldn't figure out why. And Bob Marley's song goes, everything gonna be all right. Everything gonna be all right. Everything gonna be all right. Things weren't all right. Bob Marley lied to me. I wanted to kill him. But he was already dead. That would have been weird. Let's move to high again. And the only thing I like to do is sing, but I couldn't sing in front of people because I was really shy, just like singing in the privacy of my own dorm room. But I couldn't do that because God gave me the strangest roommate ever put on the face of the earth. Meeting this guy, my first day, I'm wearing a tank top, shorts, I'm barefoot, I've got a backpack and my guitar. I kick open the door, I'm dressed like a surfer, and he's looking out the window. I'm like, dude, what's up? And he turns around, and you all know that gothic look some of you all into? I'm not making fun of you, I've just never seen it before. This guy was the godfather of that look. He had greased his hair straight back, powdered his face white, and his lips and nails were black. I kid you not. And he turns and goes like this. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. And I thought he was kidding, but he wasn't. He had painted his half of the room black, and he made a pentagram that made blood drops fill up the words that says Satan rules. I'm like, great, I got the Dark Lord's offspring as a roommate. His name is Brian, but I called him the Count. And it stuck. Everybody on campus started calling him that, because he really wanted to, or thought he was a vampire. Him and like 13 other kids formed this cult on campus. They had all these books on Dracula and how to put spells on people by using like blood and Windex and stuff. And he hated music. I turned on my stereo once. He's like, ugh. I'm like, no tunes. It's okay. And I was bigger than him, and I knew I could kill him. But he had powers I'd never seen before. This dude could sleep with his eyes open. And I'll never forget when I rolled over on my bed and saw him on his like this. I'm like, oh. See, I knew if I beat him up early in the day, he'd be laying there going, you can't tell, can you? I may be sleeping. Either way, you die tonight. So I saw him grab his laundry and leave. So I'm like, finally, I got the place to myself. Count leaves, so I'm sitting on my bed, and I start singing. You ever been in your room, you think you're alone, and you start singing to see how good your voice is, and you turn and someone's been watching you the whole time? Or you're trying a new dance move, you're like, ole! And they're like, The Count walks in, he's standing behind me, and I'm like this. I just feel his presence. I'm like, hey, little sister, don't shed no tear. No, but, oh my gosh, dude. He drops his laundry and he sits on his bed across from me and starts staring at me, rocking like this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I think he's putting a spell on me. I'm like, I don't want to be a mushroom. I don't know what they do. It's possible. I realized he's trying to intimidate me. I got my Irish up. I'm like, I'm sick of this guy. I'm going to sing. If he attacks me, this guitar's made of wood. I'll jab it to his heart and kill him. Come on. So, I'm thinking a fight is going to happen, but that's not what happens. One of the most awkward moments in my life takes place. I get ready to fight, so I turn this way, so in case he jumps, I can just lift it up. I've sharpened it down to a fine point. And that's not what happens. I go like this. No woman, no cry. True story, it goes like this. No woman, no cry. And I was like, hey, oh. He sang, and he had the voice of a 3-year-old girl. It was like so bizarre. It was so high-pitched. I'm like, that's why you don't talk. I go, it's like, imagine going to see Star Wars, and Darth Vader comes on. He's like, hey, Luke, I'm your dad. You're like, no, man, right? It's like if ever he's going to sing, I thought he'd be like, no, I'm not crying. It doesn't. And here's where it gets really weird. He finishes singing, and he just wraps his arms around himself, and he starts rocking, going, and I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, are you going to explode? And in the doorways, 5 members of the lacrosse team watching like this. I'm like, what's up? Like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. They're like, get out of there, get out of there. I'm like, okay, Count, find your happy place. I'm going to go outside. And I shut the door, and they're like, dude, man, we didn't know you could sing. And I'm like, I don't sing in front of people. And they're like, come on, sing it for us. I'm like, no, I don't sing in front of people. They're like, you were just singing for Count Chocula. Come on, man. So I'm like, all right, just the 5 of you. I sit down on this picnic table. They're all sitting in front of me. And it was so weird. It's just how college kids are. The minute I went like this, out of nowhere, 1 million college kids showed up, and they're like, play. I'm like, where'd you come from? They're like, the wind. I'm like, all right. So, they're in front of me, and I start singing. I'm singing my Bob Marley tunes, and I don't know, half an hour in, this dude stands up. We're still friends to this day. The biggest dude head I'd ever met in my life. His name's Jamie. He stands up, and he goes like this. Dude, I know these tunes. I'm like, all righty, what the? His next line is brilliant. I must get my guitar and join thee. I'm like, please. He comes back a half hour later, and he sits down, and he's like, Chaw. And he's doing all these solos, and he's a great musician. I'm like, dude, you're amazing. He's like, I know. And we're hanging out, having a good time, and all of a sudden the lacrosse team gets up, and they start leaving. I go, where are they going? And he's like, watch. I'm like, no, seriously, where are they going? He's like, I said, watch. So I look at the lacrosse team, and they're going over to this little garden area that our campus just spent like $10,000 to beautify, and they put all these little baby trees there. Our campus did not allow alcohol on campus. The lacrosse team did not agree with that policy. At night, they went in and dug up all the baby trees and buried vodka bottles underneath them. All of a sudden, I see them kicking over trees. They're pulling out alcohol. I'm like, no way. And I'm like, I like school now. And everybody starts partying and drinking. We're having a good time. About an hour later, we start hearing sirens. Somebody called and said a riot had started on campus. They sent like 10 cop cars chasing in. People are running and screaming. It was that day I learned how much college guys love alcohol. Instead of running home, they're trying to roll their kegs to safety. I'm like, dude, run away. He's like, not without Billy. And this officer of the law reaches over and he grabs my guitar and he's like, you're done playing? And I'm like, not a problem. And he goes, then we got to kick you out of school. I'm like, why? He goes, you supplied alcohol to minors. You're lucky we don't send you to jail. I'm like, it wasn't my alcohol. He goes, yeah, where'd it come from? I'll never forget the look in his eyes when I looked at him seriously and went, the trees. He's like, smokes crack. I'm like, so everybody leaves. I'm sitting there sulking, and I'm like, man, life sucks. I'm just miserable. And this guy in a suit walks up to me, and he's like, dude, I own the bar across the street. I think you're great. I'll pay you $200 a night. Get that messed up kid next to you, and I'll pay him $200. I'm like, are you serious? He's like, Friday and Saturday night. I'm like, Jesus. And I drop out of school, they throw me out, and I start playing in a bar about half the size of this room, actually a lot smaller, about just this floor area here, and I start becoming this local celebrity on campus. Everybody starts knowing me. I'm 19 years old, I'm underage, drinking for free, and people are paying me. They're like, how can my life get any better? And then this happens. I'm on stage singing this old song. It goes, give me the peoples and free my soul. I want to get lost in your rock and roll and drift away. And I'm on stage singing, right? And all of a sudden I get that feeling somebody's staring at me, and I'm like, give me the peoples, free my soul, I'm gonna die and never grow old. Please go away. I'm 6'4", about 220 pounds at the time. There's a man like 6'8", about 250 pounds behind me with a goatee, sunglasses on, a trench coat, and looks like he's got a gun in his pocket. I turn to Jamie, I'm like, dude. He's like, what, dude? I'm like, dude, some dude is staring at us. He's like, that's cool. I'm like, dude, it's not cool. He's like, why, dude? I'm like, dude, turn and look at this dude. And he's like, dude, I don't want to. I'm like, dude, just look. And he's like, dude. I'm like, dude, what did you do wrong? He's like, I have no way of recalling that information. I go, dude, I think he's got a gun. He goes, are you serious? I go, yeah. And he's like, I cannot perform. And he just walks off the stage. And I'm like, we're going to take a short break. I'll be right back. And I start running off the stage. Immediately, this Sasquatch starts chasing us. He's like, Ugh. We didn't have cell phones back in the day, man. I go to Jamie, I'm like, dude, man, get to the payphone, call 911, because they just blocked the exit with cases of beer to restock the fridge. I'm like, call 911. He's like, I'm not leaving you, bro. I'm like, that's sweet. Shut up, we're going to die. He's like, by the time the cops come, he'll dismember you. I'm like, dude, sit next to me. So he stands next to me, and this big guy walks down next to me. If I stood behind him, you wouldn't see me. And he just grabs me and turns me. He's like, Ugh. I'm like, is there a problem? He goes, your name's Sean? I go, yeah. He goes, my name is Tuna. And I'm like, what's your name? He goes, Tuna. I'm like, oh, death by tuna. No, man. I didn't see that coming. No. And I go, is there a problem? He goes, you guys shouldn't play here. And I just freaked out. I got in his face and I go, don't threaten me, man. I'm going to make one phone call and have you dead in 5 minutes. You don't know who I know. I don't know anybody. I'd be calling my Grammy. I go, Jamie, tell him who we know. I turn, Jamie's gone. By the payphone, there's a pillar this wide. He thinks he's hidden behind it, holding a quarter, screaming, do you need help? I realize he's not going to remember the number for 911, so I'm in trouble. And this guy goes, what's your problem? I go, you're scaring me. I go, what's in your pocket? And he goes, now this is 1 of 10 times I thought I was going to die. He goes, microphone. I'm like, hey. I'm like, what do you got a microphone for? He's like, I like microphones. You got a problem with that? I'm like, no. I go, what do you want? He goes, I'm scouting you. I want you to play my nightclub. And I go, what's your nightclub? He goes, I have a place. It's called the Wobbly Barn. It holds 2,000 people. I want them watching you. I'm going to make you a lot of money. You're going to make me a lot of money. You interested? I'm like, what are you going to pay me? He's like, what do you get paid here? I'm like, $200 and drinks. He's like, I'll pay each $2,000 a night. I'll give you a condo for free, a ski pass, and all your meals and drinks. You interested? I'm like, hello, Tuna. Jamie comes running over. I love skiing. Just like that. And for 7 years of my life, I was playing up at this place, getting everybody to follow me. I had this ability to get people to listen to me, and I had 2 official sponsors, Jose Cuervo and Jägermeister. They paid me $500 a week just to drink their alcohol on stage, and I started getting a lot of people to pay attention to our show. Ski Magazine started writing about us, famous people who come and see us. Eventually, I get a phone call from the actor Alec Baldwin from the TV show 30 Rock, and he's like, hey, I want you to do a show for us. I'm like, are you serious? It's like, yeah, so next thing I know, I'm in a private jet, put a band together, and we're playing in front of, like, celebrities. I'm old, but these guys are cool. But I'm playing in front of, like, Billy Joel, Robert De Niro, all these guys, and who were my heroes. Yeah, they were really old now, but it was really cool for me. Like, this is getting crazy. I'm like, how could it get any better? Then other people like, you got to play my part. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm coming home from these shows, sitting next to my wife, and the Joan Rivers show is on, and they're talking about me. There's video footage of me. I'm like, this is crazy. And then the president himself of the Motion Picture Associations of America calls me and asks me to host a show in New York City in Times Square for 50,000 people. And I was the host. I'm introducing Cher, and I got to sing 2 songs, an original and No Woman, No Cry. And then I was asked about doing a show about my life and about ski country and that whole thing. And my life's just getting crazy. And I'm like, at this point, I've got 2 homes, one on the beach with 4 private beaches, sailboat, powerboat, fishing boat. We got a condo in Killington, beautiful wife. For fun, we go to the airport, just fly anywhere we wanted to because we could, and just live like that. Now, how many of you guys would like to live that kind of lifestyle? You guys are like, but Jesus said yes. Yes. In fact, that would be my intention during adoration tonight. No. Right? So here I am, I'm on stage, and I'm hanging out with everybody, and it's like I'm getting people to drink, and I'm writing all these songs about drinking. And every show, I'd come up with a new toast, and I'd toast the crowd, and they'd pay me like $1,000 if it was a good toast, because everybody had drank, and it was crazy. And I was like the most popular person in this whole area that they'd ever had. It was like, it was fun to be liked. It was awesome. But I'm here now. What happened? And basically, I looked out my window, and I was going to go sailing. From my window, I could see the ocean, and I could see my sailboat. Sounds really cool. And I'm staring at it. I'm like, I'm going to go to Key West. I'm going to do a show. I'm going to make $1,000 there. And all of a sudden, I just kind of realized I'd been staring at my sailboat for 2 hours, and I hadn't moved. All of a sudden, my chest got really tight. And I started freaking out, and I thought I was dying, having a heart attack. And I suffered a massive anxiety panic attack. How many of you besides me have ever had a panic attack in this room? Look around the room. They're fun, aren't they? We'll go out in the parking lot later and hang out. You're going to die, me too. And I freaked out. Because I went like this. I have everything in the world and I'm not happy. I'm bored. I won the game. Everything you guys think you need and the world's telling you need to have happy, I had it all and it wasn't enough. I'd lost I know for sure 5 friends to taking their own lives, and they had more money than I did throughout my musical career. And I go, what is it? What is it about this lie that entices us? We think it's great, and we find out, you know what, once you get there, it's not all that it's cracked up to be. So I was like going, is this what God made me for? Did God create me to help people get drunk so that I could cash in on them becoming alcoholics, so that I could just do whatever I want, all by saying, I'm a good person, I make people smile, or is there more to it? So I got a little brave, and I wrote a song about God. And I played it on the bar in front of everybody. Because I realized there comes a point where you either got to say yes or no to God. Either you're in or you're out, man. God says either you're for me or against me. Either you're in or you're out. You can't sit on the fence. And I sang a song about God, and within 3 weeks, I was completely out of work. I became the biggest laughing stock you could ever imagine. I went from hero to zero like that, and it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. My wife was like, I love it. We're both jobless, and it's awesome. Because now we're following God instead of letting society dictate what we're going to do, what we're going to say, how we're going to dress. We're going to live for God. And it was really cool. Because God was like, Sean, I created you to write some songs, but not for that. I created you for something else. So you know what I did? I listened to God. And he sent me to a little country called Haiti off the coast of Florida. And he asked me to build an orphanage, and I did. And he asked me to build a school, and this September, don't clap or anything, 500 kids are going to be able to go to school, and we're starting a medical clinic over there. And I started writing songs and putting out CDs to help fund this thing. And I just want to teach you a chorus to a song real quick, okay? I wrote a song about the orphanage in the school. And I can't tell you how cool it is when God gives you a gift and you realize, you know what? I'm not going to waste it. I'm going to use it for God. I'm going to take whatever he's given me and just be a vessel of his truth and love. And you've all been given gifts. And God's saying, how are you going to serve me with them? So here's the chorus, ready? This is going to sound weird. It just goes, hey, yo. I stood on top of the orphanage, and I looked out at all these children who would have died, who aren't dead now, kids going to school, people working, and I just shouted out, hey, yo. And it sounds weird, but I couldn't think of any human word to shout out to God in thanksgiving of him saying, I told you, let go of the world, hold on to me, and you are going to go on an adventure. And our God keeps his promises. So I'm teaching this because I'm going to show you a little music video in a second of what God was able to do through an idiot like me who wanted the world and found out, you know what, the world sucks. I want Jesus. I want God.